Hi there, folks. Thanks for the question about where exactly do you start in this gold text example. Well, I'll show you, and I apologize because sometimes it's quite hard. I forget that some people don't know the initial steps to get started. I assume a little bit too much, and that's really the trick, I suppose, about being a reasonable teacher is to explain all the steps very clearly. So rather than starting at this point, I'm going to say let's go back and cancel all that and say no, I don't want to save that, start again. So we really need a blank canvas, a blank sheet of paper on which to start. Now you can actually, of course, if you've got an image open, any kind of photo image, you can actually stick the word gold onto that should you wish. But we're going to go back up to the file menu and choose File, New, Blank File. I'm on a PC, so the shortcut there is Control+N, Command+N on a Mac, of course. Next question is, how big do you want this document to be? Well, I tend to err on the side of going a little bit over the top, so I'll always choose slightly bigger sheet of canvas or paper as a starting point, because I can always crop the bits I don't want off later, and it's easier to crop off later than it is to add extra to your canvas. It's a little bit simpler to just crop stuff off. So I'm because I work in metric, we're going to choose A5, which is pretty much half A4, and I'm just going to say, hey, that's fine, okay. Now, of course, for this exercise, we want to have more of a landscape look to the canvas. So I'm going to just rotate the image 90 degrees. There we go. So now we've got a landscape sheet of paper, as it were. Now, how do you actually get the text in there? Well, you can choose the text tool, or it's technically called the horizontal type tool, and start typing, and of course nothing happens other than the fact that the options palette here panel is going to go crazy, because as I press different keys it selects different tools on the toolbar. So what I really need to do is have the horizontal type tool selected, and then I need to click in the image once, and when you do that you can see it's blinking away at me like that. This is called a text insertion point, so that's where the text will start when I press G for gold. There you go. So that's where it starts, and then it's going to range right, as we can see there. It's kind of a bit weird because at the moment it's preset to center justified, as you can see here. So if I just undo what I've just done there and I choose left justification, which is kind of the more normal one, and then click in the document and type in gold, it actually goes to the right, as you would expect normal typing to do. So that's something that can trip you up as well at the start. Just make sure that your justification is left justified, and of course some cultures have right justified. So that's where it can help. How big it goes is controlled by the font size, and here we've got 250. It fits nicely because I've just been practicing this before I started recording. How coloured it is, whatever the colour is chosen by this little fella here, this little drop down colour box, and I can click on whatever colour I like. And the weird thing about this is I've just clicked blue, but you can see yellow. It shows you the opposites. If I choose yellow, it'll go blue. It's not until you go, yep, okay, do you actually see the real colour that we've chosen. So it comes up in sort of negative, I suppose. I'm just going to go back to jolly old, where were we before? We had sort of, I'm just going to go grey. There we go. So there's grey. I can use the move tool to move the lettering on its letter layer, on its type layer, into the center of the picture. As a tip, always have the text, the layers panel open, so you can see the text layer there at the top there with the word gold as a descriptor, and that's a good place to start. Another point that I made is I'm assuming that when we apply this gradient, and I'm just going to quickly go to the gradient, and I'm going to choose from my metals. It's just going to go off the screen here for a moment. So I'm just going to go to my metals area. I'm going to choose what they call as gold, and then if I drag it across, it immediately says, you can't do that, Robin, what are you thinking about? And that means we can't do it to a vector text layer. And a vector text layer, which is just a standard text layer, any kind of text is made up of vectors, which are mathematical algorithms. And the beauty of that is you can enlarge text 500% or 1000%, and it's still going to look clear and sharp. You can't do that to a photo because pixels, which make up photos, have a very finite enlargeability, and you can probably double the size before it begins to start going soft. So what it's saying here is you've got to turn this from vectors into pixels. Click OK. And you can tell that because now we've got this funny checkerboard pattern appearing in the jolly old layer at the top there. So the checkerboard pattern means there's nothing there, okay, which is good, because if I want to put the word gold on top of, I don't know, a photograph, it's just the words gold that's going to go on there and not this horrible white background. So if I did that, if it was a white background, of course it would obscure everything in the photo underneath it. So that's good. So far so good. If I then take the gradient tool and just randomly click and drag across the thing, it just splats the gradient across the entire canvas. Why does it do that? Well, there's nothing to stop it. It just does it, just covers it up. So it just ignores the fact that I'm trying to make a good gold setting. Now, Pamela's got a very good tip also in the class about why not use the color gradient. So when we click on the gradient square and we get this sort of scary looking gradient editor thing, we can actually choose a specific color. Okay, we can choose a specific color by typing in the numbers that she quotes from a Photoshop, previous Photoshop recipe, which was 247, I believe, and then green, RGB green 238, let's go 238, and then jolly old blue 173. I don't know how they managed to come up with that number. So that's what it's giving me there, 247, 238, and 173. It doesn't look very goldish to me, but we can click OK, and you can see it's a much paler looking color than the one that Adobe thinks is correct. And so I think I can probably get away with doing something very quickly just to change it. It's not exactly accurate. And I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to click on this and choose. It won't allow me to pick it out there. That's very annoying. So 247. Let's try it again. 247 and 203. Now this is one of the disadvantages of Photoshop Elements, is that you have to repeat everything because it doesn't have any preset save options, whereas Photoshop itself is just full of that. So if you create your own special color, you can just go save and call it my special gold color or something, and then it's there forever for you to use. But there we go. We've just changed the intensity of the color a little bit to that particular recipe. It may or may not come out terribly well. And again, if I just drag that across randomly, you can see it just completely stuffs up the picture. So we have to put into this something that's going to stop that from covering the entire canvas. And that's called a selection. And if you remember my previous little video that I posted, if you hold the Control key down and just click on the gold thumbnail, lo and behold, you can see the line of marching ants around all four letters there. So now when I drag my selection, my gradient across the selection, it just lands in that particular area there, which is exactly what you wanted to do. So that's essentially a little bit of an explanation of what we're going there. I think I've got the gold completely wrong there, but let's just undo that. And I think the idea is to actually drag it vertically down like that. And incidentally, with this gradient tool, if you just drag it a little bit, you can see that it doesn't blend or soften those differences between yellow and white too much. The longer that gradient line, if you just sort of drag it all the way down and then let go, you get a much smoother gradient. So I can go on and modify this because, of course, it's pixels. So I can use just the very simple levels, and I can just get in there and change the color just depending, or change the intensity of the color, just depending on how bright or how effective I want that to be. So hopefully that's just a little explainer on how you get started with this quite confusing project of changing your standard text to go gold. Let's see how you go.